This
Okay.
conference will now be recorded.
Okay, we're recording.
My first order of business is approval of from November 5th meeting. Mike is not here, but I the minutes. I know there's a correction to be made in the minutes to the ONG AP contract as number A133, not A13. Are there any other corrections or notations on? Hearing none, may I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented, as corrected?
Motion to accept.
And do I have a second? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, negatives, or objections? Thank you. It passed. Next order of business, bring us up to date where we stand on our building permit. Randy, do you have a moment or two on that?
Yes, I have a couple of comments for update, and also after making them would ask the folks from ONG to, and if anyone's on from SLAM, to offer their perspectives on what I'm saying, and if they'd like to add any additional color to it. I spoke with Jeremy Ginsburg this morning from the Planning and Zoning Department. The call was well timed in that he was working with Dave Keating, and that they plan to complete their review of the permit package today and pass that along to the building department for that department's review and completion of the building permit. So it appears that we're approaching the end of P&Z's review of the package. We also had completion of review from the Town of Darien Health Department regarding their aspects of the project, so we can tick that box. I then called Pete Solheim from the building department, asked him about the timing of his review. He said that he recently has been provided with a large approval matter with the Federal Realty project, so that's on his plate. And he asked about timing. I responded, I said we need it in 2 weeks. Of course, he said that was going to be challenging, but potentially doable. So just to provide some context for the workload at the building department and other requirements. But David, when I'm done here, I'd love to hear your perspective on the project schedule and how you think that fits into everything. The next thing we talked about was the general nature of the permits, and he started to go through some things that I'll refer to as like prerequisites. He said that temporary construction, staging, trailers, all those different types of things can commence prior to official granting of the building permit. There should be no hesitation on that. And then he went into 3 other things. Engineer of record provides a special inspection letter. That's required prior to permit, really to make sure that particularly the concrete, a lot of the structural elements of the project are appropriate. The second thing he mentioned were comm checks, basically making sure that the project will meet energy code. And then the last one would be the third-party code review. That would be required prior to issuing of the building permit. So all those things may already be included in the package that sits in Town Hall and is going to be heading over to the building department, or they may not. So at this stage, I'd like to turn it over to ONG for any comments on their perspectives of this process, timing, and anything else that needs to get done in order to achieve full building permit.
George, do you want to? Is there anything you feel you want to add related to permits?
I think you pretty much covered it. I can say the special inspection letters. I don't believe that was in our package that was sent over with the permit, but I believe we do have that. that letter in the statement of special inspection that we put them. It's my understanding, double check with SLAM on the third party code review. I believe that was complete. I believe that had to be complete prior to going up to the state for their approval. But I mean, I imagine it'd be just working with SLAM to get that over to the building department. The only thing I really don't know, we'd have to talk to SLAM is this energy review. I'm not sure what that is actually, so we'd have to talk to SLAM about that.
So Randy, with that, we'll follow up with SLAM on those 3 items and just make sure if they are not to the town yet, that they do get there. And we'll make sure Amy copies you on that, so you're in the loop.
Great, David. How about regarding schedule, master schedule, and how this all fits in?
Yep. So you know, we're in the process of doing a schedule update now. We're not drastically off from where we were. I would say at this point, it's more likely that you know, that it's going to be that last week in November. We're starting up out there for some fencing. You know, we're working on getting the first batch of contracts out and getting all the insurance and bonds and everything. So with next week being, for all intents and purposes, a short week, I just realistically think it's probably going to be the week of the 30th. And if Peter is okay with some of those temporary measures commencing ahead of the permit, I don't see an issue with that.
Great. Thank you. Kip, I think that covers it, Kip.
All right, great. Thank you, Randy. I had sent out on item number 3, I had sent out a construction summary of bid packages as of November 9th. We've all received it. That package basically said that at least as of the of November, we had the lowest bids totaling $42.2 million, 7.5 million lower than the budget established of the budget. However, as always, this week, which we'll go about talking about shortly, but I wanted you to know that this is a format that will keep track of everything, so that when we approve bids this week, we'll add them into the column, update every where we stand, so we're constantly monitoring where we stand with regard to our budget. So far, we've got. Yeah, I would also want to say that we took an average of all the bids, each package, added them all up, which is the very last column in the sheet that I sent out to you. That number came out to be $49.6 million, was $5,000, 1% off the budget. So the budget is a pretty good number. We've obviously got people out there that are anxious to have work and are giving us pretty good prices. Good news. I'm going to move on to item number 5, which is now by David to discuss the awards of the next bid package this week, which are the building committee's approval for the general trades, the HVAC, plumbing, roofing, fire suppression, and the electrical fire alarm and electronic security system. David, it's all yours.
Okay, thanks, Skip. And just see, I did mute a few people just because we were getting some background noise. It was chopping it up. So if you know, when you do go to talk, if you have any comments, just please check to make sure that you are unmuted, or at least be on video so we can see your lips moving with no noise and let you know that you're muted. So in the past, you know, 6 days since we met last, we did conduct a series of other scope review meetings. And as Kip mentioned, these are the packages: general trades, the roofing, fire suppression, plumbing, HVAC, and electrical fire alarm and electronic security. So those meetings all went well. They were well attended. We had members of the design team there. The O&G AP team was there. There were members of the building committee present where possible to listen in. So the first one was OWI. They're the general trades contractor. And so I will bring their letter up. So OWI had after their review, we had deemed them the lowest qualified responsible bidder with a bid amount of $2,393,000. There are a few alternates, and again, there's no need for the committee to vote on any alternates this meeting, but I would say that the next regularly scheduled committee meeting, I believe, is December 3rd, and I would say that it would be a good idea to receive feedback on the alternates by that meeting, so that we make sure that we're not getting behind on anything. I know that the soil storage is currently moving target with respect to if we're able to secure an offsite location. That would be the only other real real critical one. But I think if we target the December 3rd meeting for a review and discussion of the alternates, that would be fine. So after the scope review with OWI, again, finding them to be the lowest qualified responsible bidder, we are asking the Oxbridge Building Committee to accept issuance of a contract to OWI contractors for the contract amount of $2,393,000 for bid package 1.06A general trades.
Is there any discussion that people would like to have with regard to this package? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the award of this bid package, this letter. Do I hear a motion?
I'll second it.
I didn't hear who was the first person to make the motion. I got Duke as a seconder. Rusty, okay. Give a second. Is there any further discussion? Being none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Are there any people who are opposed? Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is passed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next was the roofing, and in roofing, we had, I will show you here, we had a total of six bidders for roofing. So we scoped the apparent low base bid, Greenwood Industries, who had a base bid amount of $1,183,000. We conducted that scope review and found that they had included all of the scope, all of the necessary requirements of the contract. And so we are bringing before you Greenwood Industries. So we reviewed the above referenced information and are asking for approval to enter into an agreement with Greenwood Industries for the contract amount of $1,183,000 for the work included in bid package 1.07A roofing.
May I have a motion concerning this bid award, please?
Motion to accept.
Motion from Duke. Do I have a second?
I'll second. It's Diane.
Diane seconds. Is there any discussion? Obviously, we'll look at the roof warranty as an added alternate later on. There being no further discussion, please indicate if you're in favor by saying aye. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we are going to fire suppression. This is the fire sprinkler system. And going to the bid tabulation, we received 6 bids for fire protection. The apparent low at bid day was Fire Rated LLC. We conducted their scope review last week and found that they had included all of the scope, met all of the contract requirements, and there were no issues raised that would prohibit us from entering into an agreement with them. That being stated, we're looking for approval to enter into an agreement with Fire Rated LLC for the contract amount of $550,000 for bid package 1.12 fire suppression.
Can I have a motion to approve this award package?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Duke makes a motion. Do I have a second? From Rusty?
Second, Katie.
Oh, Katie, from Katie. Thank you, Katie. Is there any discussion on this particular award package? Hearing none. All in favor of awarding this bid package to fire suppression fire rated, please signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any negative votes? Are there any abstentions? Thank you. The motion is carried.
Okay. Yep. So before we get into the next ones, because the next two approval letters, they're going to the same parent organization. They are two separate entities, but they are under the same corporate company. So this is to talk about the plumbing, HVAC, and electric. A couple of the things that had transpired here was that Ferguson Mechanical had submitted the apparent low bid for plumbing and HVAC. They submitted a combination bid. And then on the electric side, CamSan had submitted the apparent low bid on November 3rd. However, after discussions with them, it was discovered that they had neglected to include the security work in their contract. And the value of that work is between $550,000 and $600,000, which, as you remember, that was part of the large delta between the number one and the number two bidders. If I go to the bid tabulation sheet here, this is where we had $3,180,000 for CamSan, and then a jump to $4,292,000 with Ferguson Electric. And like I said, we essentially know what was quoted by the sole source security vendor. So like I said, depending on what markup CamSan would have put on it, that it adds at least $600,000 to their bid, which brings, they would have still been low. However, it was not a qualified bid. They did not include all of the scope, and through the public bidding requirements, they were disqualified, and we are in the process of getting their withdrawal letter on this work. So that was kind of the recap there. So what we were then faced with is looking at the fact that we have essentially one parent company, being the Ferguson companies, that would have, excuse me 1 second while I get my math here. That would have approximately $11.5 million of work on the project, $11,584,000. It's dealing with systems that permeate the use of the building long after we're gone and turn it over. The actual fundamental systems of the building. So we had very lengthy discussions with Ferguson throughout the scope review process. They have proven that they have included all the work. There is one item that we'll talk about specifically about the electric, but it applied to all of the bidders for electric. So they had the scope. We had a long discussion with them about the staffing that they're willing to commit, that we will write that staffing into the contract as far as the allotment of time and who the people are. We've done a review of who the staff is. We've worked with several of their staff in the past. But one thing that we've started the discussion about, we want to talk about today, is that the last time we had this scenario on a project, because of the criticality and the fact that it's one entity providing so much of this intensive labor, that we feel that we can increase the success rate by increasing the staff that we have on the project solely for the purpose of monitoring the MEP system installation. And so what that means is, in what we've always included is an MEP coordinator, and this is someone who has industry experience. That it's they're an in-house person for ONGAP, and they're involved through the coordination process, through the install process, all the way through to the building is commissioned. Right now, we typically put that person on the job site part-time, anywhere from, I believe it's 24 to 40 hours a month, depending on where we are in the project. What we're suggesting is that we allocate some additional funds to having this MEP person full-time on the project. As an order of magnitude, it would be an increase to the general conditions for the ONGAP joint venture to the tune of about $285,000. That's if the person remains full-time from now through to the end of the project in 30 months. So, that we may not need it the entire time, and certainly if, towards the end of the project, or, once we get through the academic wing, we can certainly assess that. However, we feel that with essentially all of our eggs into one, MEP basket, that we could see a benefit through schedule, through the work effort out there, the quality control, and even just vetting the change process, making sure that any changes are they're bird dogged by one specific person. This person's role would be to do nothing but to follow up and to make sure that the work of that company that has $11.5 million of scope being implemented to the T for the contract. So that was something that we've thrown out there that we feel has the potential to certainly pay for itself over the duration of the project, but obviously is a different project approach than we had initially presented to the committee, and we felt it was worth a discussion with the committee.
David, may I merely ask Andy Ashforth for his thoughts on this matter, because obviously he'll be there when the actual work is being done, so I'd be interested in Andy's thoughts on this as well.
Andy, you're coming out like a chipmunk again for some reason.
I told them to stay off the helium balloons.
Well, I wasn't counting on this response.
I think he's saying he'll do it for free.
Oh, got it.
Andy, is there a way, can you call in separately from a landline to see if that works? Sorry.
Well, while we're waiting for Andy to either get his voice lowered or come through the line, why don't you go ahead with the bid letters?
Okay.
Can I just ask a quick question on this? So obviously, Ferguson then Falls is the lowest bidder in all three categories. So we're obligated to go with them. We don't have any other options really. They fulfill the requirements that you've set forth. So now this is a matter of, based on your experience, trying to find a way to manage the same trade or the same supplier in three of those trades based on past experience.
Exactly, because when you think about it, if we had a plumbing contractor that was low, that we could award a contract to them, an HVAC contract, separate HVAC contractor and a separate electric, you can do some, if there's an issue with one of those entities, you have some other avenue. Here it is one entity. I must clarify that since it is, we require bonds, payment and performance bonds from all of the trades. So technically, because Ferguson Mechanical is a separate entity from Ferguson Electric, they will have two separate trade contracts and they will have two separate bonds provided. But again, the bonds are necessary only when things get to a point where it's obviously no one wants to get it to. This is really a matter of being proactive and making sure that that a contract value of this extent is executed without any sort of hiccups. But
And are
yeah,
there some
Diane, to your point,
benefits?
they did have all the scope of work. I mean, they've
Yeah.
proven that they reviewed the documents, they understand the scope of the work. Among the 3 packages that we scoped them for, we probably had them in scope reviews for over 4 hours, maybe close to 5 hours scope review.
And are there benefits to the 3 trades? I mean, in terms of coordination of work, or is it's more of a concern that it's too large of a percentage of the project is in one trade, in the hands of one supplier?
Yeah, I would say there are some benefits. When you look at the coordination process, I mean, they still have to put on, they still have to have these individual people doing the work, but however, a vast amount of the coordination effort for the MEP coordination is, their head of BIM is the head for all 3 of those. So I'd say it's going to be a little nicer as far as, listen, you've got a pipe and you've got a duct. It's in your own house to try to arrange those in the most efficient manner instead of two outside companies that have no fiduciary relationship with one another to work that out. So there's some benefits there. Hi, Andy. I think you're on mute now, Andy. Can't hear you yet. Oh. Nothing yet.
Well, let's take us through then, David,
If you want, I spoke to Andy about this, and I'm in 100% agreement with this approach. When you have a single supplier accounting for 22% of your total project, it warrants full-time attention, at least through most of the project. And if nothing else, it will help cut any potential change orders down. And all you need is about a 2% cut in change orders to pay for this. So I think it's a great idea, and I'm concerned that we got so many eggs in one basket, but this is a good way to ensure that it gets done on a timely and cost-efficient basis. And that's really Andy's rationale for this.
All right, Dave, why don't you carry us through with the rest of the actual bid letters?
Sure thing. Okay, so we have Ferguson Mechanical, and this recommendation letter is for plumbing and HVAC. They submitted a combination bid. Their individual bids were the apparent low bids in each, and then their combination bid was additionally lower than that. So there are 3 alternates. Again, I would say none of these things affect anything below grade. So the December 3rd meeting is not an issue to make a decision on those alternates. So we reviewed the scope, and we asked for permission to award a contract to Ferguson Mechanical Company for the contract amount of $7,292,000 for bid packages 1.13 plumbing and 1.14 HVAC.
Before I ask for a motion, David, is the committee's acceptance of the Ferguson Mechanical and then Ferguson Electrical, do we want to approve the change in the full-time MEP coordinator from part-time with an additional potential cost of $285,000? Do we want to approve that first, or do you want to approve that after we've looked at both of these awards?
You can do it in whatever order you want, Kip. We can continue on with these approval letters. That's fine.
Well, maybe we should ask the committee first whether they agree with the increase in the cost of the general conditions, that's where the category will be, to have this MEP coordinator full-time rather than part-time. Part-time was included in the original budget estimate, and now we're talking about increasing that number by approximately $285,000 should the individual be full-time for the entire 31-month length of the, not knowing we're going to need him that entire time, but we might as well be safe on that because these projects tend to run throughout the project. Is there any discussion from the committee about making that approval to the general conditions?
Hey, Kip, I would ask, just thanks for saying it the way you said it. My only thought is, we're not committing to the $285,000 cost. We're committing to putting him on full-time, but if during the course of this, it's not needed full-time, he would go back to part-time. Is that how the process works?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we're basically approving the full-time hiring of an MEP coordinator based upon need, obviously, but not based upon a complete, we're going to spend the full amount. That remains to be seen. Is that correct, David?
That's correct. We're locking into the start. Yeah, Andy's got the thumbs up there. So.
Okay.
Right.
Well, let me make that. Let me turn that into a motion to the extent that we've all heard this discussion. We agree that the MEP coordinator should be viewed as a full-time position, at least for the present time, of monitoring the work of both Ferguson Mechanical and Ferguson Electrical throughout the project. That is the motion I'm putting forward. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, fine. That motion has been carried. Now let's talk about the plumbing and HVAC combination mechanical bid.
Okay. You want me to reread that, Rusty, on the combination bid? Or, Skip, sorry. So we've reviewed all the information and are asking for approval to enter into a contract with Ferguson Mechanical Company for the contract amount of $7,292,000 for bid packages 1.13 plumbing and 1.14 HVAC.
May I have a motion to approve this bid award?
Diane.
I'll second.
And Duke will second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Thank you.
Okay. Then our last approval letter of the day is for the electrical, fire alarm, and electronic security. We went through what had happened with the bid results earlier. So one thing that's slightly different with this letter is you'll see here is that there was a facet of the work limited to a portion of the access control system. It was to be provided by Intralogic Solutions, which has done work in the town for some time. Mike Lynch, certainly at any point, if you want to chime in, by all means. So it was assigned to all the electrical bidders. So each of the electric bidders had to solicit pricing from them. That was done. However, the Intralogic failed to provide pricing to any of the bidders. They simply stated that they did not have time to do it. So it had put all of the bidders on a level playing field, and that none of them were provided with any sort of proposal for this system. I know Mike has been working diligently to try to engage them in that process. However, as it stands right now, we do not have that scope of work included here. I think through conversations that we've had with the design team, with their gut feeling and talking with Ferguson, and then I think Mike received similar information, is that we're talking about probably an all-in value of maybe $50,000 to $60,000 is what this could be. But just note that there is a portion of the work that was in the bidding documents that is not covered by this approval letter, which is why we've stated it here. And in the approval letter, we do have some backup from Ferguson, essentially running through the scenario, what had happened, who they had contacted, the feedback they have received from the vendor, with the attachments of that correspondence. And this was essentially the last correspondence with them was from the bid date itself, just saying that no pricing and all bidders will bid at an equal delay. Is how it was left. So I don't know if there's anything that Mike wants to add here. I see he's on another phone call, but
Dave, this is Diane. If you could just give a brief background on why this particular component of the work was sole provided, and how that complies with our need to provide the lowest bidder in all of this work.
So I believe how this had come about, Diane, was that Intralogic has I think it's the lockdown the panic button system in each of the Darien schools currently. So the idea there was to use the same vendor so that the systems were exactly the same from school to school.
Okay.
And I think Mike could probably provide a little more information with respect to does he see any detriment to to moving away from them. Hi, Mike.
Morning.
Hi. We were just talking about the Intralogic and the fact that they neglected to provide a price, so it was not included in the work. And Diane was just asking a little bit of the basis for going with Intralogic initially, and with the crossroads we're at here, what does that mean for us as far as the need to truly to continue to pursue Intralogic, or do we take a different approach given the responsiveness of that vendor?
My gut feeling now is a different vendor, different alarm vendor. We were thinking of switching from them about 1.5 years ago, and there were multiple vendors, including ones we currently use, that have a similar type system. They're not, each system is a standalone. It's not like it's all networked together under one big system. The guy finally did send me something. He sent me something incorrect at about 4 o'clock on Friday, and then about 6:30, 6:45, he sent me the corrected parts list that I sent you this morning as an email. You might not have gotten a chance to see it yet, Dave.
I did see it, Mike. It looked like it was still incomplete, right? It was still missing labor or some.
Missed all the labor. Yes, it missed the labor, but that kind of, to me, it seemed to verify the number you and I were talking about on Friday of about the $50,000 to $60,000 range. So, yeah, I mean, this guy's got money. Right there, he's got a job he's looking at, and he's ignoring it. So I don't want to have a vendor like that messing up this project. I'd be happy. I have no problem at all if they want to switch to another vendor.
And Mike, I think when we were scoping Ferguson, I think they too, we could also look to them if there's some systems they've used. Amy, I'm sure CES is, typically you'll spec these systems. So,
right, D'Agostino actually specified it, and they have contacts with plenty of vendors we could suggest for you. Right. We were using Intralogic because of the request from the district to make them sole source. You don't have to.
So Mike, it's Duke. What's the effect of having this school with one vendor and all the other schools with another vendor? Or are you going to put that out to bid, so to speak, for the other schools eventually?
We're thinking we.
Does it even matter?
Well, no. Rich and I had this discussion a year ago with Interlogics, telling them that we were going to move on to another company if they didn't get their act together, which they really haven't. They did for a little while, and now they haven't again. So.
Okay, thank you.
So our proposed way of moving forward here is, since we don't have it in the scope, what we can do is, in the meantime, over the course of the next month, we're going to be establishing a guaranteed maximum price contract with the town. What we can do is we can put to keep it on the construction side of things, not move it to a soft cost, an owner cost. We could put it in the GMP as an allowance. We can establish, say, that $60,000 amount in the GMP for this, whatever the general version of it's called, not calling it Intralogic, but if it's panic button or whatever system we call it, and that way we have the opportunity to get a spec issued. It would be essentially issued to Ferguson to be priced as a change. We would be reviewing that, and then we would use that allowance in the GMP to fund that, so that when we set up the GMP, we are accounting for these costs, but since we don't know exactly what it is, that's why it would be an allowance. That's our proposed means for moving this forward in some fashion.
So David, the answer would be that D'Agostino, Amy would talk with D'Agostino and Mike. They would decide upon who the vendor ought to be, or they would just put it out to bid.
Well, yeah, it wouldn't go out to bid. It would be, because
I think
the intention.
we would have to be careful about making sure that it's not just handed to another vendor, because the state approved Interlogic as the sole source provider.
Mhm.
The only way to go away from that would be to bid it and have 3 bids to compare, I think.
Okay, so, but okay, so I guess we'll have to talk to it, because the idea is that, what happened was we rolled it in under the electrical scope of work, right? So let's talk through that as far as we would have to, do we have to publicly bid that again?
I think you can reach out to 3 vendors through Ferguson and keep it under their contract as an allowance, in the similar way that, for example, if a sub-consultant comes under SLAM's contract, we would reach out and get, an appropriate number of proposals and select the low bidder. We did that for the third-party code reviewer, for example. We put it under our contract, but we solicited for low bids. That way, if the state comes about an audit and looks to it, sorry, dog. If the state comes about and an audit looks at it, we have the backup to show that.
Okay, that we can certainly do that, and I guess so. We'd be looking for D'Agostino to basically give some of the parameters, right, for who those 3 systems could be solicited.
Well, I think they'd be happy to provide you with some names. I'm sure Ferguson has worked with other vendors, and the spec, it already exists. So all they have to do is use the spec that we have, and we should, instead of making it specific to Interlogic.
Okay, understood.
Amy, can you hear me?
Yeah.
It'd just be important that, along with Michael, yourself, that I'm in that loop, because for this security stuff, the implication of one school versus another, I just want to make sure. Anyway, just make sure you, and I'll follow up with you just to make sure I'm kept in the loop of that, because that's an important decision right there, and I'm disappointed to hear that from Interlogic, but anyway, we'll circle back, but I need to be part of that discussion.
Sure, no problem. We'll be able to do that. I mean, I think the scope is written such that it is open to, you'll be able to see what the scope is, and school to school, it can still be utilized.
Thank you.
Okay, well, with that discussion, are we prepared now to look at the bid letter for Ferguson Electrical?
Correct. So
Okay,
here we go. We, after our review, we're asking for authorization to enter into a contract with Ferguson Electric Company for the contract amount of $4,292,000 for bid package 1.15 electrical, fire alarm, and electronic security. Noting that the work of Interlogic is not included in that scope to be reviewed and priced amongst 3 bidders at a later date.
do I have a motion to approve the award letter as provided?
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
Second, Katie.
Katie made a second. Is there any further discussion on this matter? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? The motion is carried and duly noted. Thank you. Okay,
That concludes item 5 as far as we're concerned, Kip.
and Andy, did we give you a chance to comment on the MEP?
No,
I guess-
still nothing.
Okay. All right, so our next item of business is a discussion
Sorry,
about...
Andy, I can see how frustrated you are there. I'm sorry it's not working.
Okay.
Kip, I just had one question before we moved on. Dave, you mentioned that we need to address the alternates prior to our next meeting. And I just wanted to find out how we're going to proceed with that. I think we had talked at the last meeting about perhaps SLAM and yourselves coordinating some material for us to help us go through that list. I think we need to look at them in total, and so we can make sure we kind of understand the full scope as we select individual alternates. So I'm just wondering if you both had some suggestions on how to proceed with that before the next meeting.
Yeah, honestly, I know we did talk about that. I know that we have not provided any specific information to SLAM yet, just in the midst of trying to get these initial scopes and contracts. But Amy, I think the most updated bid tabs, I think you have those, right? Where we know essentially the cost of each of the alternates, right?
I think what we need from you, Dave, is just an assemblage of when multiple scopes touch one alternate, just to make sure that SLAM is not missing any of those combination prices, that you can give us a total for each of the alternates. What I thought, Diane, in response to your comment, is that SLAM will be providing the graphics for your as a reminder of what those alternates are, and for your approval process, that I would just put together a short PowerPoint with the imagery of each of those alternates. And if it's not a graphic, for example, the roof warranty, I can clip in a piece from the spec section as a reminder of what that one is, and others if there's no graphics to go with it. And then what we'll do is we'll take the total of the cost of that alternate, whether it's a deduct or an add, and put it on the same slide, so that when you discuss it at the next meeting, you have both of those available to you. So that's all I'd be looking for from you guys, Dave, and we'll prepare the presentation portion of it for you. And if I understood correctly, that would be discussed at the December 3rd meeting, is that correct?
Right, and I think what we'll have to do is we'll have to look and see which which alternates are affected by bids that we have not scope reviewed yet. Should something happen, right, with if a low bidder in one of the other packages that we're going to be scoping after December 3rd meeting, if that could affect the alternate, then we would not ask for that alternate to be acted upon. We would say that for the December 3rd, it would be all the alternates that we know the full breadth of the costs across all the disciplines for the trades that we've actually scoped, and we know that those bidders are the bidders we're going to use. So.
Sure,
Although
and
it'd be
most of the
value-
alternates, I would say we already have scoped. You know, a lot of them are MEP in nature, a lot of them are site work in nature. And we've done all those scopes. So I'm not concerned. And also general trades for the marker boards. There's very few. I imagine we will scope them before December 3rd.
And is that some material that we could receive prior to that meeting so that as a group we could individually and perhaps maybe reconvene our design subcommittee just to have a point of view on that prior to the formal approval meeting on the 3rd?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, my formal presentation on that will be ready, you know, earlier. I can make it a goal to do that this week. But I encourage you also just to look back on your notes from the value management presentations and decisions that are already on the website, because I'm just going to be pulling from those presentations. In fact, most of the value management list came from, I'm sorry, most of the alternates list came from those value management sessions.
Right.
Brian, not to put you on the spot here, but as far as I know you've been updating cleaning up the bid tab sheets and all that. Could you go through and provide that compilation of the alternates for Amy?
Yeah, get that done.
And I would say, like I said, the only ones that I think are worth noting are ones that if we haven't scoped the bidder that affect one of the alternates, then we probably should not include that alternate yet. But any of the alternates that we've scoped all the people that had any sort of cost with it, those are the ones we'd be looking to compile.
Right, and we can put a pending value on the others.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it'd be nice just to have the list of items that we're not gonna approve as well, because I think it's important for the big picture understanding of where, I think in decision making, if there's something else down the road that we're weighing between, I don't know. I think it's good to have a big picture view as well.
Understood.
Agreed.
Yep. Okay. So
Yeah, that's great.
we'll
Thank you.
have our information to you in time so that you can make any sort of publication ahead of the meeting on the 3rd. We'll get that compilation to you so you can include it on your slides or.
Sounds good. When I'm ready to publish it, and if I haven't gotten the information from Brian yet, I'll just start bugging him.
By all means.
Great, thank you, Amy.
Sure.
All right, the next item on our agenda is establishing a construction oversight subcommittee. Rusty, this is something you put together?
Yep. I sent everybody this morning a half-page outline as to what this construction subcommittee role is and the composition and how decisions are made. We discussed this conceptually, actually, for about a year. During construction, there are a lot of decisions that have to be made, whether they be on submittals or change orders or whatever. And we need a subcommittee to be able to address those on a very, very timely basis so that we do not slow down the construction process. The subcommittee will also be responsible for monitoring continuing value management throughout the project, which is very important, and just keep the committee abreast of any details and progress of the construction process. The proposed composition of the subcommittee are 4 members of the building committee who have construction experience, which would be Nick, Mike Alfieri, Randy, and myself. And then the 2 ex officio members who would have a great deal of input because the final resulting school they're going to have to live with and work with, and that would be Mr. Lynch and Dr. Forshaw. Decision-making, again, what this is for are the decisions that need to be made between Oxbridge Building Committee meetings. And there will be, I assume, a fair amount of them. Most of them small, but maybe some of them larger than that. We've broken the decision-making ability of the subcommittee down as follows. If the cost is less than $20,000 and won't materially impact the function or design of the school, then it'll be made by 2 of the 4 subcommittee members. If it is between 20,000 and 100, and again, the same criteria, and with the appropriate ex officio member weighing in here, it'll require approval of 3 of the 4 subcommittee members. Anything over 100,000, again, with the same provisos, it would also require, the majority of those, we would have to have a special meeting of the Oxbridge Building Committee and would require a majority of those Oxbridge Committee members who are present to move it forward. And then all the other decisions, which hopefully, if planning is done correctly, would be made at the monthly Oxbridge Building Committee meeting. Again, this is just for the stuff that comes up on a construction site that needs immediate addressing, so as not to hold up the project. Questions?
Yeah, hi, it's Diane. So I guess that I think I'd support this. It seems to be a practice that's been put in place on prior projects. If that's not, if that's the case, Rusty, if you could tell us about that. And also, I guess with the caveat that if something comes up that clearly is something that might be a little bit, not controversial, but something that really the whole committee should discuss. We seem to be a really flexible group that can meet on a pretty short notice. So I think it's important to keep important decisions, even if they are small dollar amounts, in front of the group, if they affect design or maybe compromise quality or whatever it might be. So and I recognize these 4 members are quite capable of making decisions for the group, but that would be my only concern. And seeing as we are a very flexible committee.
Let me address both of those. The second one first, that is why we put in, even in the small decisions, the specific line that says not materially impact the function or design of the school.
Yeah.
So if there is anything of that nature, then it would have to be handled probably the way that might involve the total committee. So that's right. the two smaller incremental cost decision-making process does take that into account. Secondly, we did do this at the middle school. We had 3 people at that point, and I think Andy will agree because APO&G handled the middle school too. We were able to make decisions within minutes sometimes that needed to be made in order to keep the project rolling and not upset the schedule for the day. It worked really, really well. And in the middle school, we had both the principal and the assistant principal and Mike's predecessor involved in those decisions. So if it was something that had to do with the management and maintenance of the school itself, Paul stepped in and weighed in and took part in the decision. And if it had something to do with the actual academic management of the school, the principal or vice principal weighed in. And, you know, at the end of the day, we got things done quickly and correctly for all those involved.
Yeah, and I guess if I could just add one more point to that, sorry, Katie, it's just, I guess I question in general how to keep the remaining committee members involved on a very regular basis, keeping the site visit schedule kind of available to everybody should somebody else that not on this subcommittee want to be present in one of the meetings, just to keep the channels of conversation going. And you know, it sounds like we're going to try to meet on a more regular basis than we have in the past 6 months or so, in order to maintain that as well. So I guess my question would be, what kind of strategies can we put in place to keep everybody engaged and get everybody on site as well?
Once we start going, and this really hasn't been discussed, but once we start going, the full committee will be meeting on a monthly basis. And so prior to the section of APO&G's monthly report, the subcommittee would summarize what it has been involved in terms of any decisions that are significant or during the prior month. So everyone will be kept up to date.
Diane, I should add that the meetings will probably be at least once a month. They could be twice a month. We've always been scheduled our regular meetings twice a month. I also wanted to add that in the town garage project, which was I think about a $6 million project, we had levels of authority of the committee, 1, 2, or 3 people, and those numbers were like 35,000, 50,000, and I believe, I may be wrong on the 75,000 for 3, to be approved on the spot when necessary to keep things moving. Always coming back to the committee and telling the committee what the full amount was, what happened, et cetera, et cetera. And this worked quite well. So from the garage project, we had the same kind of approval during construction to keep things moving.
And is it necessary to name 4 people? I recognize that you guys are stepping up and really taking responsibility, and I do appreciate that. But say, for example, a person not named on that list happened to be on the site visit that day, maybe that will never happen, but might the sort of decision making, or is it really important that decision making just lays within those 4 committee members?
Most of this stuff, Diane, is going to be construction oriented. And these are the 4 people who have that actual experience. And, you know, even if someone happened to be on site, and we also need to talk about that at a later date, and who can go on site, who can't, and the safety concerns and all that stuff. But the whole purpose of this is to turn around some decisions very, very quickly. And that's why you need to name 4 people. And if if the project manager, the project superintendent, whomever's got a problem, he will start down that list. Boom, he gets 1 person. Explains the issue that needs to be resolved. That person will then attempt to get a hold of the other 3, and a decision will be made. So even if someone else is on site or whatever, it really won't impact the decision-making process. But that's the way it worked before, and it worked very well. Katie, you had a...
I did, thank you. So my question is in the same vein as the points that Diane has been making, just a little bit different. I just wanted to ask how these changes will be tracked and recorded, and then how that will be communicated back to the committee. Who's keeping minute on those changes and recording.
There'll be APO&G on a monthly basis. We'll be presenting a full report for the prior month. And that will include a separate list of change orders. And if the change orders were some of the ones that this subcommittee approved, they'll be noted up front as having been approved already. But everyone will be aware of them. And then they will go into the proposed change orders going forward. The proposed change order list will be far bigger than the small everyday items that usually pop up that the subcommittee has to be involved with. So even on a regular basis, the entire committee will be involved in the majority of them. So there will be a change order list.
And I think it would be helpful for Dave to explain that the process that the CM will be tracking on AConnect and access to view those decisions in real time and in that website.
Sure. So, as you had mentioned, Rusty, sorry, is anyone else getting the feedback?
Yes, an echo.
I'm gonna mute everyone, and then I'll just unmute myself and see if that corrects it. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, all right. So the way it goes about is we do set up the structure for tracking all the changes in the course of the project, and as Rusty mentioned, we will be submitting a monthly report, and it talks about what are the changes that are currently under review, and then what are the ones that we know about. Say we encountered something on site. We don't know exactly the full magnitude yet. We'll put an estimated cost in there for it. So it's not just, you're not just seeing costs when they're before you to be approved. It's, we see things coming down the pipeline. When a change is ready to be approved, the committee does not see it until it's been thoroughly reviewed by APO&G on site, and then it also goes to the design team. So if it's an item relative to structural, not only will SLAM review it, but Steve Murray, your structural engineer, will be reviewing it as well to make sure that it's that the scope of work is clear, that the value of it is acceptable, and once there's an agreement that the scope is covered and its pricing is correct, then and only then does it go to the committee, so that it's not, it's been reviewed before you see it. As far as the way that the AConnect portal works is that there's a vast transparency of information there as far as when a change is sent out. It may be sent to just say the four members, but everyone would have access to view it. Everyone on the Oxbridge building committee would have access to view it. And what we'll do is when we do pile our first monthly report, typically we'll establish our GMP first, and then we'll start issuing monthly reports, because up until then, the contract value is changing constantly as we award other contracts. But first month that we have our monthly report, we will make sure we take some time and explain through, from STEM, because there are a lot of cost documents in it, and just so that understands what the content is and how to interpret that information that's in there. Was that helpful?
Thanks for going over that, Dave.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments?
So just back to one other item that was noted earlier, I guess, Rusty, that you noted. My question too would be whether in some form or another, all the committee members could have access to visiting the site at the building meetings or on somewhat of a regular basis. And you had said that maybe perhaps not everyone would have that access to the site. And I just think it's important for all the committee members to have the opportunity to visit the site at some point, should they desire to do that, on a coordinated basis, of course.
Yeah, I mean, what I said is that we should discuss this later and set up the ground rules. There are safety implications that come into play that we need to be very cognizant of. And we don't want to take up a lot of the time of management who are on site, giving tours, etc. We actually ran into that issue in the middle school, and we had to set up a system that allowed both other committee members, but also staff, Board of Ed folks, or whatever, but it had to be on a scheduled basis so as not to interfere with the construction process and ensure that safety was involved.
Yeah, and I would say, just to give our 2 cents on that, is all we ask is that obviously we want everyone who's going to be on the site to go through an orientation just to understand some of the hazards and just typically the attire that we would that we would want to see people wearing, before they come on the job site. And then we can get you the hard hat and safety vest you need so that it's safe when you're walking around there. And then that, when we figure out the times, is that you always just check in at our office so that we know, we go to great lengths to make sure we know who's on site at all times should something happen. So we would just want to know whenever someone from the committee is on site.
Any other questions, comments? Now I have a motion to approve the formation of the Construction Oversight Committee.
I'll make a motion.
Second? Do we have a second?
I'm gonna unmute. I'm gonna mute because some people may still hear.
Kip will second the motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Neutral? Motion's passed.
Okay, presuming people can hear me, the next item of business is status negotiations to provide off-site soil storage location. Rusty?
As you know, we have to move many thousands of square yards, cubic yards, excuse me, of soil off the site because of the tightness of the site. We have been looking at one location that's up at the junction of 124 and the Merritt Parkway, directly next to the southbound entrance to the Merritt. As you come from Darien on the left-hand side. It is a site that has been used by the Department of Transportation for storage of materials, brush, dirt, and even vehicles over time. It is an ideal area to store it because it's about a mile up the road in a very low traffic area. So it would make it very, very convenient, particularly when we're moving it on and moving it off site. Our initial inquiry into the Department of Transportation was met with a negative answer to that. However, we connected with the Merritt Parkway Conservancy, which is a not-for-profit group that is working closely with the DOT to bring back the essence of the Merritt Parkway and its historical character. And they took up our cause and came back and said, well, actually, even though it's the DOT right of way, they don't have any say in what, excuse me, that's wrong. They don't make the decision on the use of it because the Merritt Parkway is classified as a scenic byway federally, which is good news. And they have a committee called the Merritt Parkway Advisory Committee, or MPAC, that includes people of the Merritt Parkway Conservancy and the DOT and a number of other people. This gentleman that is the executive director of the Merritt Parkway Advisory Committee checked with the secretary of this group, and they would be very happy to entertain our proposal and have a presentation for us to use this. The actual application is going in today with the help of Ed Gentile of the Department of Public Works, who's familiar with the process. And then a presentation will be made in the next couple of weeks. And the indication is that it would be favorably received. And this would allow us to start moving dirt off at the end of the month into a location that's very, very convenient. And by the way, would also save us a significant amount of money for the project. Questions? Okay. Just one last thing I add. We now have both contracts, SLAM and APO&G, finished, signed, and done. Thank goodness.
I'm going to say it was good that you found the Conservancy. It turns out that they unusually have, if you will, influence over the Department of Transportation, which has always been hard to work with. This looks like it might be a win for us. If you all recall, we had an alternate cost in there from the winner of the site work, which was Sean's Lawns, $160,000 if he had to haul it all away. I imagine we won't save all of that money because we'll probably do something special for the Conservancy in that particular area, but we're certainly going to save a fair amount of that. Is that a fair representation, Rusty?
Yes, right on the line. Right on the line.
Okay. So keep working at it. The next order of business is really to discuss the school presentation to be given this, is it Wednesday evening or is it Thursday?
Wednesday evening, 8 p.m.
Wednesday. And
Right.
what is it? Who is running this one, and what are we all organized for this presentation?
We're all set. We have done a presentation, SLAM, O&G AP, last Monday to the faculty, and we're going to give the presentation on Wednesday evening.
Right.
Katie, do you think there should be anything more added to that presentation?
Sorry, I wasn't part of that presentation, but Dave and Amy did send along the slides that they had put out, which I thought looked good. So I'm confident that they will be able to handle it.
So my understanding then is it's more of a what's going to happen on the site, how are we going to manage the construction, rather than talking about the school building and all of that itself. Am I on the right track here?
It's an overall recap. Amy provides an overview of the design. In the majority of it, this was done. The presentation was done in concert with review by Luke as far as the content, making sure we weren't under or oversharing information. So there is an overview of the project, and we talk about how we deal with safety and security throughout the project, the separation of construction and construction and school activities, and then what are things going to look like for them over the course of the next 6 months as the project ramps up.
Exactly. I give a brief overview of the design just to remind people of what's to come, and O&G AP does a great job of describing the upcoming few months and putting people's mind at ease in terms of security and safety, and also the traffic patterns and situation on site.
I imagine the traffic will be of concern to the parents.
One other thing I would just highlight is that a lot of people won't have updated designs, even though we all have been working with them for a number of months. Those designs were first shown to the Board of Ed even quite a while ago, before we had the thousands of people turning into those meetings. So I would expect that a lot of the images will seem very new to people. And then the only other piece that I would just flag is that I think some of the images also might include some of the ad alternates, and that's probably not a concept that a lot of people are really familiar with. And then just along those lines, I just wanted to put it in the committee's head as well that as we discuss ad alternates, I know that there's interest from the Oxford PTO as well to be able to gift something to the schools. So just as appropriate for timing, if we can keep that in mind about looping back in with them.
You're thinking of the garden area, Katie?
That's one that's definitely been on the list. Also the slide, I think would be something that would be really fun.
Well, will you be attending that meeting, Katie?
Yes, absolutely.
So Katie, I actually rather than sharing every image that the committee has seen, I narrowed down the slideshow to be a briefer overview of the design for the faculty. And I was going to keep that same deck. I intentionally did not share the playground image with the slide as one of those because of the alternate being so much in the forefront of that image. So other than that one, I don't think that there's too much imagery that would show the alternates. I guess the back area of the cafeteria does have the gardens off kind of cropped on the side of the page, as well as the curved seating area. But so I'm happy to point them out as alternates if you'd like, but as an overview, it might be easier to just sort of brush through them and not dwell on those design elements. It's up to you.
That sounds good, Amy. I just wanted to raise the point before we were caught off guard. And I'm happy, I know you sent the slides. I'm happy to go back through and look as well to see if there's anything that I think you might get a question on. But again, the presentation that I saw you guys have, and I've seen you do this, I'm sure it'll go very well.
Thank you.
And if there are any, that Brian was the one, I think, making the tweaks to the PowerPoint. So if there's anything with that, just, I would say, you know, sooner rather than later, if you want to get some, if there's slides that have to come out, we'll just communicate that with Brian so that we have the correct presentation material for Wednesday night.
And Dave, to that point, I just want to make sure that Katie has access to Brian's slideshow, because I think what I sent was the design portion of it, and Katie probably got a copy of that. But I don't know if the committee has seen the overall presentation with all of our slides compiled.
Sure.
Amy, send that out to everyone along with the invite for the meeting?
Sure.
Thank you.
So Dave, I'll circle back with Brian if I can get the latest PDF, and then I'll put it on the website for everyone.
Okay, because I think I see Brian's still on, so I think the only thing really going to need to edit is just changing the date, and then instead of you know, presentation to faculty on November whatever it was 9th, it's going to be presentation to the Oxbridge community on November 18th. So we can make that change, and then Brian, if you can just convert it to a PDF for, you know, for out of respect for size so that people receive it, then we can, if you send it to Amy, she can circulate it to the committee.
Unmuted.
Thanks.
Okay.
Unmuted.
Are there any other issues relating to the presentation, upcoming presentation?
I might just, after this, ask the new chair if he might want to consider a short version of that presentation just to the board, just to bring them up to speed. As Katie had said, that the board hadn't seen this update for a long time, but it wouldn't need everybody to be at that. But I think it's just a short version, a prelude to what was to come the next night might be helpful. But I'll ask Mr. Chairman after this meeting.
Yes.
Unmuted.
Okay. And certainly, Dr. Medley, if there is something that you need the construction team, I'm happy to make myself available if there's, you know, to have a representative of the construction team, not necessarily having the full group that we'll have on Wednesday night, but if you need something from us, I could be there.
Appreciate that, David. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
When is that Board of Ed meeting?
Tuesday.
Tuesday?
Tomorrow?
No, next week.
Next Tuesday.
Unmuted.
Okay, all right. So I'll say that would be a problem. That would be a problem.
Right. Do I hear that the Board of Education meets tomorrow?
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, the 24th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other matters to bring up to this meeting concerning the building project? Is there any public comment?
Oh, Kip, I just had one question. Just again, what the next step is now. Are we going to have, when are the next set of approvals going to be presented, or when are the next set of approvals needed for the remaining trades? is there another week or 2 weeks or what? You said after Thanksgiving? Is that what you had said? December 3rd, Dave, is when we'll see the next batch of approvals?
That's correct, Diane. We've got some scope set up for this week, and next week again is going to be interrupted. So we'll be before the committee on the 3rd. Not all of the rest of the approvals, but another chunk.
Unmuted.
Make sure, David, that the schedule of scope reviews is sent out to all members of the committee rather than a select few. I mean, I've been pushing that all along, please. Okay.
Yeah, I believe that the meetings as of the last week have been going out to all of the committee members.
Unmuted.
So Diane, you should see all those on your computer, I hope. Okay. Is there any public comment today? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn and thank everybody for their patience and work on this project.
Motion.
Second.
Katie, and followed by Duke. I hope all of you have a pleasant Thanksgiving, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kip.
Good day.
Thank you.
Bye all.